This is controversial maybe. I'm not sure you can teach entrepreneurship. The biggest difference between an entrepreneur and what I'd call a wantrepreneur, which is somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, but they aren't. The biggest difference is risk tolerance. It's Friday, you don't have a lot of money in your bank, payroll comes out on Tuesday, and you don't have enough money to cover your payroll. The entrepreneur sleeps well that weekend, knowing that Monday morning is your biggest mail day, you're going to get enough checks to cover your payroll. The wantrepreneur is up all night, he can't sleep, he's nervous, or they're stressed, they're like, holy crap, we're going to have all these money problems, and the stress can consume you.
All right, Tom Kubiniec, welcome to Beyond Fulfillment.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, sir. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. So, Tom, you are the founder of Securit Tactical Storage, which is one of the leading military weapon storage companies in the world. And you've grown that company incredibly over the last many years, but you've got quite a fascinating way that you even got into this industry, and especially how you started the company. So just to set the stage for our listeners, could you talk about that story and how it came to be?
Yeah, I'll give you the Reader's Digest lightning round. So I graduated high school. I was a guitar player. I was practicing 6-7 hours a day. My goal was to be a rock guitarist. Played in bands for about 10, 12 years. Achieved a pretty decent level of success. In 1984, Guitar Player magazine heard one of my demos and did an article on me as what they said, the best unknown rock guitarist. I was, living outside of Buffalo, kind of a local guy playing. And after that article, I packed up, moved to Los Angeles with plans on being a rock star. That was the big dream. Got out to California, played with a lot of cool people, did a lot of neat things. I developed tendinitis shortly after arriving. And at a point when I thought my career was going to just take off, all of a sudden I couldn't play anymore. It was gone. And, what was a week turned into a month, turned into 3 months, and all of a sudden I'm just like, this is not happening. So I took a job telemarketing typewriter ribbons and liftoff tapes for way back in the day, and just because they would hire anybody. I was horrible at sales, but I worked hard, so they moved me to a non-sales position. I saw the money being made in commission sales, so I quit that job and took a straight commission job selling computer supplies. 2 years into that job, I quit and started a telemarketing business in my apartment with a couple of partners. We had no idea what we were doing. We just figured we'll figure this out. And 4 years later, we had 17 sales reps and a nice little business. I sold to my partners, went off on my own with Green Line Data doing the same thing, got into the internet in the 90s, started writing websites. I taught myself HTML. We got into tape storage. Younger listeners won't know this, but back in the day, people backed up their computers on backup tapes. Large businesses would have thousands of backup tapes, which all had to be stored and organized so they could access archival data. We had TapeRack.com was a very popular website. We were one of the largest sellers of racking systems. The HIPAA laws came out for hospitals and medical records. We had all of a sudden one day, all personal data had to be locked in hospitals and schools. So we started SecureLaptopStorage.com, several websites, and we started selling laptop storage into these institutions. And in 2001, I got a phone call from a gentleman. He said, "Can you store an MP5?" I'm like, "Sure." "What's an MP5?" And I thought it was some little MacBook or some computer hard drive. He said, "It's a little submachine gun." I started laughing, and I said, "Who are you?" He was with the FBI. We talked for a little while. I said, "Give me a couple of weeks." I started doing research, and I knew nothing about this. I'd never owned a gun at that point. And I started doing some research. This is before Google. I was using probably Yahoo, and was finding these references and articles about the military was struggling as they transitioned from the M16, which is a traditional battle rifle, to the M4, which is really a weapon system with a lot of attachments, a lot of different parts. And I just thought it was fascinating. The Gulf Wars were going on. I figured this is something that we could do to really kind of give back to the military. I'd never been in the military, but I know these guys were risking their lives for America. So we jumped into it knowing nothing about it. It was a steep learning curve, and just started selling weapon racks into the military. It was very slow at the beginning. I had the telemarketing business still running, but we slowly figured it out. In 2008, there was a solicitation put out by U.S. Army Special Forces Command. They wanted to hire a company to survey all their armories and draft a report for command as to why they were failing. Again, we're total novices at this. We've been doing it for a while, but we're really on the outside. We're not gun people. We really don't know the space. And we got a meeting with a colonel at Fort Bragg. Gary Myrick was my head sales guy. He and I, at that point, were Securit's a three-person company. Underneath Green Line Data was my data storage company. Got down to Bragg. We're walking down the hallway to this guy's office, and there's all this memorabilia, all this stuff on the walls. As I approached the door, it just kind of hits me. And I walked into his office, and I just said, "Good morning, sir. My name's Tom Kubiniec. I'm considered the leading authority in small arms storage and armory design. I really believe we're the company to do this for you. I think we're the only company that can do this for you." And we talked for about 15 minutes, left, went back out in the parking lot, and Gary's looking at me, shaking his head, and he's like, "What the hell was that?" I look at him, and he goes, "Leading authority." I started laughing. I said, "Gary, you know what? There is no authority in this. Nobody knows how to do this. It's never been done before. We claimed it. We got to back it up. Let's win this contract, and let's back it up." Well, we did win that contract, and I spent 18 months on the road. I went to every single Special Forces armory. I spent a day with each armorer, documenting workflow, looking at the struggles, challenges, a lot of photographs, prepared a pretty sizable report for command, which he did a presentation on. And it was during that time that I designed and patented the Securit Tactical Weapon Storage Platform, which was a culmination of everything I had learned. But over that 18 months, I became the leading authority in small arms storage, armory design. Nobody had ever been in these spaces. Nobody had the access that we had. So it was just a wealth of knowledge. We launched our system, and 3 years later, we were a primary supplier to the U.S. military. So it just took off. Now, sequestration, the forced military cutbacks around 2013 kicked in, and it just about put us out of business. We went 7 months without getting a single order, making payroll, paying rent, hoping this is going to turn around. I did end up laying off a good chunk of the staff, and it took us back to a very small company. It was at that time we determined to go into consumer products, because no matter how good we were in the military, if Congress turns off the money, we're dead in the water. Consumer products was a slow launch. We started in 2014. We really got serious in 2016, and then we made Inc. magazine's fastest growing companies in America in 2018 and 2020. It just took off. As of today, retail sales is about 86, 87% of our business. We're looking at some massive military contracts right now, so the military may be our prime business 2 years from now. There's a lot of action happening on that front that we're aggressively working on.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I appreciate the whole story there. A whole lot to dig into. Let's just start way back when. So even when you start your telemarketing business, you said, "Look, we had no idea what we're doing, but we're doing it, right? We'll figure this out." So classic entrepreneur attitude. Like where did that come from? Has that always been your approach to things?
I think so. From the time I was very young, when I was a kid, 8, 9 years old, I was out shoveling driveways to make pocket money, mowing lawns. I started a little lawn mowing business in high school, working with realty companies as executives were moving and they had houses to sell. I was the guy who would take care of mowing the lawns. I was a lot cheaper than the big professional organizations. I had a few friends help me, and I'm 16 years old, and every Saturday I'd make $180. I'd pay my guys each $40, and they were very happy to make $40. Back then, $40 in a day was a lot of money, and it was kind of a cool little business. And I've just kind of always been that way. I'm a hands-on guy. All the design work we do is designed with wood, with metal, with welders, with hammers. I do everything in the physical world. Then we send it to people to have CAD drawings and to have the technical side of it done. Entrepreneurship, this is controversial maybe. I'm not sure you can teach entrepreneurship. I'm not sure it's a learned skill. The biggest difference between an entrepreneur and what I'd call a wantrepreneur, which is somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, but they aren't. The biggest difference is risk tolerance. There's a lot of people that, it's Friday, you don't have a lot of money in your bank, payroll comes out on Tuesday. and you don't have enough money to cover your payroll, which, I mean, that could kill a company. It could put you, get you in legal trouble. The entrepreneur sleeps well that weekend, knowing that on Mondays, this is back in the days of mail, bringing checks in, knowing that Monday morning is your biggest mail day, you're going to get enough checks to cover your payroll. And the entrepreneur trusts the system and just moves through it and just does it. The wantrepreneur is up all night. He can't sleep. He's nervous, or they're stressed. They're like, holy crap, we're going to have all these money problems. And the stress can consume you. I think the true entrepreneur just doesn't affect you. There's a certain level of, I don't care. Things may go south, but it's just a problem to solve. It's not the end of the world. But that's just kind of how we did this. And I've made incredible mistakes throughout my career. And I encourage everybody in this organization, one of our big monikers is fail fast. Try it, fail fast. If it doesn't work, I always give the analogy for, in business success, you're driving to someplace you haven't been to before, you've got directions, you're driving down this road, and all of a sudden there's a fork in the road that's not in your directions. You have three options. You can go left, you can go right, or you can stop and figure it out. The guy that stops and figures it out is going to be last. He's dead in the water. One guy's going to go left. Maybe that's the right direction. He's going to be there first. He's going to be doing great. The guy that goes right is going to realize, hey, we're going the wrong way, and they're going to course correct and get to their destination. The person who stops and sits and thinks and goes through everything, it's going to kill you. Always be moving. Never be afraid of failure. But when you fail, you simply course correct. It's every great successful business is nothing more than a string of failures that you learn from and just keep driving.
Hey, let me tell you about Max Capital Hub. If you're an entrepreneur trying to get funding, but your credit's holding you back, these are the people to call. They do business loans, business funding, and they'll actually help you clean up your credit so you qualify for more. They're not just handing you paperwork. Their team builds an actual strategy around your business. So if you've been stuck or the bank has told you no, give Max Capital Hub a call or book a free consultation at maxcapitalhub.com. Tell them I sent you. Okay. Now, love those perspectives you have on entrepreneurship. You get into the military storage space totally by a fluke. Someone calls you and asks you to store a submachine gun out of the blue. And I think you told me off camera, like you just thought it was cool, right? Like the computer stuff was kind of boring. And you said, wow, guns are, that sounds interesting. So you kind of went with it. Slow build. And then there was like an RFP basically put out by the military. You get this meeting at Fort Bragg. And you're walking in there with the sales rep, and you described it as something just hit you and told you to say that, right? And so when you say that line, which, like, now granted, you did back it up thereafter, but at the time, right, it's easy to say, like, that's bullshit, right? You're not the leading authority, right? Like at the time when you had the balls to do that in the moment with a colonel that telling him you're the leading authority on military storage when you had no idea what you're doing. How did that go over in the meeting?
Fine. It was a line in passing. It registered with him, but it wasn't a big thing. Again, and you make a statement like that from a perspective of total confidence. It wasn't this like, hey, I'm this. It was just, good morning, sir. I'm the considered leading authority. It was very nonchalant. Just let it float out there. And we sat down and talked. It was winning that contract that made me the leading authority, but I don't know how important that sentence was in winning that contract. I'll never know. But when you've got nothing to lose, swing for the fences. At that point, Greenline Data was my data storage company, and it was doing well. Secure was a new idea. I had nothing to lose. He could have thrown me out. He could have said, this is total BS. I know who the leading authority is. It's not you. I mean, it could have happened, but you know what? So we would have walked out of there and said, all right, let's try something else. You got to have this idea that you've got nothing to lose. And you got to be careful with the money aspect of, in business, so many people focus on money. I always view it as money is a byproduct of success. Money's not the goal here. The goal is winning. The goal is winning the next contract. The goal is winning the next customer, solving the next problem. If you solve enough problems, you win enough orders, the money's going to be there. But to a fault, I've never really focused on money as a goal. And there's times when we've made big mistakes. It's cost us a lot, but you learn a lot at those times as well, and just keep moving forward.
All right. And so what was the process like of actually winning that contract, right? Because they put out a big RFP, right? A lot of people vied for that. Like how long was the process before you were actually?
Probably 3 months, 2 to 3 months. And we had a very simple proposal. And again, we had no experience at that. We're up against, L3, Harris, these big defense contractors. They probably put millions of dollars into this thing. And I think our bid was $375,000 to cover all the travel, all the time, all the stuff. So I'm sure we were probably the low bid. What was interesting is the guys in the contracting office kept sending our proposal back with questions. They basically helped us get our proposal into a condition that meets the standards for what they were looking for, because we'd never done this before. And it's possible that bold statement got the colonel to say, hey, I really like these guys, because the contracting guys all knew we're a new company. We're novices in this space, because we didn't know how to write a proper military, proposal, or, in this type of situation. We just sat down, put together as best we could, and said, let's send it. And there was a lot of boilerplate detail that they required. And the contracting office helped us polish this thing up and get it to a point where they accepted it, and we won the contract.
Okay. And that really jump-started Secure-It as far as, the growth of the company.
Well,
right?
During the contract, when we're in these armories, I recognized that complexity was killing the space. They were using a modular weapon storage system that could adapt to any gun. The problem is it had 75 different components. It was a complex system that required the military, if something changed, to buy new brackets. Well, it's very difficult for the military to buy things. It's a whole big process. When you want to buy $30 worth of stuff, it's hard to do. So we came up, and this was just me sitting back in the warehouse. I was using wood at the time because it was easy to manipulate, and I came up with a bracket that would hold every single gun in a military armory. So our system we presented was, it's a modular weapon rack with one moving part, no tools are required. An armorer can walk up to a weapon rack with any gun in his hand and adjust on the fly and store the gun and walk away. And nobody had ever seen that before. And then the rest of our system, we're compatible with a wide variety of products that you could buy at Home Depot or any hardware store. They call them COTS products, commercial off the shelf. Military loves that because when something's proprietary, it's expensive. When it's commercial off the shelf, they can source things very inexpensively. All my competitors are proprietary, and we're just like, you know what? Let's solve the problem. Let's not make a proprietary system to maximize every possible dollar. Let's solve their problem and just let it play out. And that's what we did. Our solutions solved a lot of problems, and the company really took off.
If you're still trying to hire locally for every role on your team, you're leaving serious money on the table. Ocean's Talent places AI-fluent executive operators. We're talking finance, marketing, operations, EAs, fully vetted, full-time, and dedicated to your business. These aren't freelancers or shared resources. They're U.S. caliber talent at a fraction of the cost, backed by a 3-month guarantee. And right now, Beyond Fulfillment listeners get $1,000 off their first hire. Go to oceanstalent.com/Dave to claim it. Okay. Wow. So just from observing, right, you're new in the space. And I mean, just hearing that, it could have even helped you, right? Like a fresh perspective. You're not in the industry,
absolutely.
right? You look and say, wow, this is weird. It's complex. It doesn't, if anything changes, you got to buy all new brackets. So you created a universal bracket that would store any gun. And that was literally like the perfect solution for that problem.
It was, you hit a really good point there about when you're trying to solve a problem, your first pass at it, don't look at what's out there. Don't look at what's almost working. Because once you see something, like I had no experience with weapon racks. If I had gone out and spent a lot of time with what are the competitors doing, what are they getting wrong, that would have influenced my creative side. People say, wow, you're thinking outside the box. We didn't even know there was a box. We were so far removed from it. So it's always, when you're trying to solve a problem, your first solution, draw it up, get it down on paper with minimal input from competitors, minimal input from other things out there to see what comes up with. Now, if you're struggling, then you start looking at other things. What are other people doing, to finalize and get your design work done? For Secure, creativity is the key to our success. And I think in a lot of businesses, there's so many good people in America. Your average American works hard, thinks well, does things well. So many people talk about, staffing and finding the right people. For me, it's creativity. How do you get people to be creative? Because, a baby is born purely creative. All they have is creativity. They have no filters whatsoever. And as kids grow up, they always say kids say the darndest things because they have no filters. But then they're slowly learning, no, honey, we don't say that. A little kid goes to school, makes some goofy comment. Everybody laughs at him. He's like, wow, I won't do that again. And as you grow up, you learn to conform. You get into school in your middle years, and it's all about being part of a group of friends, or you're conforming. You get into college, you join a frat, you want to be conform. You get into your first businesses, learn the culture, be part of the culture. And it's all about this conformity drive. And I work really hard to get people out of that. I refer to the company as a band of misfits. The employees here, we are the Secure band of misfits. Because everybody at some level is a misfit. None of us are perfectly aligned with what we're doing. But I want people to amplify that, to reflect on it, and to live in that world of, I'm a misfit, I'm different, and kind of push them to think differently. Because that's the hardest thing for me, is to get people to unleash their creativity and drop that fear of looking foolish. There's a point where everybody, when you're alone, you do goofy stuff. Some people sing in the shower, some people talk to themselves, and you're doing things that you only do when you're alone. I want that person in the meeting. I want that person who's absolutely free to explore ridiculous ideas without any fear of, being embarrassed, looking stupid. I want the stuff out there. And we do a lot of exercises here to try to drive that creativity.
Wow. Okay. All right. So the company takes off, starts growing. A few years into it, and because you're so heavily dependent on military, the sequestration, is that how you say it?
Sequestration was the word they used. Congress in like 2005 or 6, trying to balance a budget, said, okay, we're going to do this, but if we don't have it balanced by 2012, forced cutbacks that were so severe, Congress was like, these cutbacks are so bad, it'll force us to do our job. It was just Congress being stupid and being lazy. And they got to the point where all of a sudden these cutbacks were happening, and nobody did anything, and the military was decimated financially. And what we do isn't required for fighting a war, for defending a nation. What we do makes it easier, our solution. So we're one of the first areas that there was just no money. Every project we had was put on hold.
And I think you said 7 months without an order while you're still making payroll, paying rent, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's just literally choking the life out of your business.
Yeah, at that time, I got a nice lake house. I'm a pilot. I had a nice plane. We were flying all over the Northeast. We had a lot of stuff going on. And during sequestration, we ended up laying off our staff. I sold everything I had. And we were down to the house, and my wife and I were talking about selling the house and just getting an inexpensive farmhouse to buy us some capital, just to keep things going. And my kids were pretty young then. We tried to shield them from what was going on. The funny side of this, that I started off when I got into telemarketing. I lived in a one-room apartment in a bad neighborhood in Burbank, and my wife and I got married, and we lived in this place for 5 years, and we had no money, but we had a lot of fun. And then I made a lot of money. I had fun. Then I lost all of it, but I still had a lot of fun. It's this thing of, success and failure and all this. I've found, for me personally, making more money versus less money doesn't affect my day-to-day happiness, really. My best days now are on a tractor mowing up. I've got a big hunting property, doing trails, just being outside. And we work hard. We drive hard for success. But if things blow up, you know what? It happens. You just pick up the pieces, analyze the situation, and just move on. Just keep moving forward.
Quick word from today's partner, NordVPN. Building a business means working from anywhere. Coffee shops, airports, hotel Wi-Fi. NordVPN encrypts your connection and protects your data in over 100 countries, all with one tap. Grab the link in the show notes for a big discount and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now back to the show. Okay. Yeah, no, that's great perspective too, from someone that didn't have much, then made a lot of money, then lost it all, and then bounced back again. Like you said, the money doesn't affect your day-to-day happiness.
And you learn lessons. I mean, in hindsight, I should have recognized what was happening and made cuts much faster and preserved capital. If I had to do it all over again, I would have done more research. I would have said, okay, this sequestration thing is not going to end quickly. There's no mechanism to end this. We got to make some serious, and just cut the company size down quickly. We could have done a lot of stuff to preserve capital. We just were optimistically believing that next month will be better. Next month will be better. And it just went on for a long time.
Okay. All right. And then that forced you to pivot into the consumer market. Yeah. Where you really grew the company thereafter. So talk about that process too, where you're basically taking the solution that was solely dedicated to the military and then bringing it to the consumer market. What was that process like?
The technology side was very simply repackaging it in something that was more consumer friendly. Our military weapon racks are really big. They're really not designed for homes. But why we decided to do it was because our backs were against the wall. We had no immediate future with the military. There was nothing happening. There was nothing there. And it's something I've thought a lot about over the years, but don't deny someone their struggle. If during sequestration, the government had come in and said, hey, look, Tom, we know that this is really hard because of these problems. We've got a grant program that's going to get you enough money to keep your business going, keep your people employed, so we can all get through that. If there had been something like that in place, would I ever have thought of going into consumer products? Probably not. And why hadn't I gone into consumer products 10 years earlier? I never thought about it. I never did. We were a defense contractor. You know, the military market at the time was a $17 to $27 million a year market. The consumer market is just shy of $1 billion. I'd never done any research. I never thought about it. Once I started digging into it, I'm like, holy cow, we're in the wrong business. The consumer gun safe business is massive compared to the military. My back was against the wall. And like, this isn't working. What else could we do? Well, consumer products. All right, let's pursue this. And that's kind of just how it started. And it started pretty small. We were, again, new into that space. Interesting, quick story. We launched our first 6-gun modular weapon rack for the consumer market. It didn't go well. We priced it very aggressively. I worked with a guy at an ad agency who specialized in outdoor sports industry. And he came to me and said, Tom, I need you to raise your price dramatically on this product. I'm like, Walt, what are you, crazy? We're not selling it now. He goes, no, Tom. He goes, you're competing in the bottom end of this market against cheap safes. I need you to raise your price. I want a chasm between you and your competitors. I want people to see your product, look at it and say, holy crap, why is that so expensive? The minute they ask why, we've got them, because now they're going to do some research to figure out why it's so expensive. I mean, it wasn't priced ridiculously. We raised the prices up, and sales took off because of perceived value. It was the same product. Our margins were great. Now, our costs have gone up. We've actually kept our pricing fairly similar because our margins back then were so high. This idea that you have to be the cheapest is a killer. It's just a killer. You know, Apple computers are not the cheapest. They're much more expensive, but people love them. I use Mac because I like it. But anybody who's got the idea that we have to be cheaper than our competitors, they're wrong. Unless you're in a straight commodity business, you don't. People buy Mercedes over Toyotas every single day. They both do the same thing, but one costs 40% more. That's kind of where we're looking and living. There are some people who can't afford what I do. That's okay. You know, they can aspire to it and eventually work their way up to it.
Love that. And that, I think that's one of the best quotes I've ever heard, is don't deny someone their struggle.
I love that quote as well. I see that all over this country where the government comes in to help and they have good intentions, but giving somebody something they didn't earn diminishes them at some level. And I don't like any program where you're giving people money they didn't earn. Have them do something. It can be tiny, it can be simple, but just give them the dignity of knowing they're earning what they're getting. And I think people do a lot better. And it's at times a struggle that we get creative. We dig in. As a species, humans, we solve problems. And the more your back is against the wall, the more aggressive you're going to be with this level of creativity, of figuring your way out of it.
So the consumer business, you continue to grow that. And now, as you mentioned, the military business too is really picking back up, where you're potentially looking at some big contracts there. So it's really come full circle for you.
It really has. The military may be bigger than retail in 3 years. Really, we're looking at standardizing the whole U.S. military on our system. And it's probably an $800 million contract. And that's what we're working towards right now. I mean, we're a small company. That would change the scope of this company dramatically.
And so, Tom, when you look at the whole journey, right, from just kind of natural entrepreneur, humble beginnings, numerous different businesses, just always kind of figuring it out, stumbling into the military storage business, and then the ups and downs you've had there, and really this incredible company that you've built, and now be in position to win a mammoth contract potentially, and that would, like you said, would change the scope of your business. Looking back at your whole journey, what's been the best part of it for you?
People. Telemarketers are a unusual class of people. Like when I was out in LA with that business, there was a lot of it where people were trying to be actors, trying to be musicians. You had a lot of drug addicts. You had a lot of people that just wanted to make easy, quick money. But it was just a cast of colorful characters. And now coming into Secure, we operate at a much higher level of employee. But for me, it always comes down to the people. And, my core focus as a leader of this company is company culture, not happiness, but I want everybody to feel a level of respect because they work here. I want everybody to feel this level of pride that they don't just have a good job, they're working at Secure. They've got a job where they make a difference every day, where they can influence parts of the world, and they can do things that really improve the lives of others. Our core, you look at core focuses and all stuff for companies, we have one very simple core focus: improve the lives of others. That's what our systems do. They make your life easier. Any company with core values in a small business, they are the values of the owner or of the CEO. You can sit with a group of people and come up with core values. Most of it is just crap on paper. The values of the CEO or the owner are the values of the company. And my very simple code that I live by is whenever I interact with somebody, they should walk away somehow benefiting from that interaction. It could simply be a smile, and a real casual, to something more game-changing, but that's kind of the way I look at life, that we're all here to help each other. Zig Ziglar said, you get what you want out of life by helping others get what they want. I read that when I was first getting into sales, and it just really sunk in. And that's just how I try to operate every day.
If your business is an e-commerce brand, this message is for you. Logistics can make or break you. If you're tired of being just a number to those big box 3PLs, you need to check out our team at Easy DC 3PL. We're a different kind of partner, built specifically for growing brands that ship between 1,000 and 10,000 orders per month. We offer warehousing, fulfillment, and transportation with a focus on personalized service and flexibility. Our central Kentucky location gives you nationwide reach, turning logistics into a competitive advantage. So if you're ready to partner with a 3PL that actually gets your brand, visit easydc3pl.com. Love that. Okay. And Tom, if people out there want to learn more about your business or reach out to you for any other reason, what's the best way people can find you online?
They can just Google Secure It. We're all over the internet. Secure It Gun Storage is our retail site. Secure It Tactical is the military. My name's pretty unusual. If you Google me, I'm all over the place because there's only one Kubiniec family in the world, and we're not that big, so it's really easy to find. And if people have questions, reach out. I love to interact with people. People always think CEOs are too busy, but I like to take the time. I talk to a lot of young entrepreneurs. Anybody who's looking for help, I'll jump into a conversation.
Okay. All right. We'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. All right, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing all this incredible wisdom from your journey with our listeners. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot.